Boom! Yes folks, Hume here again. How are you doing? So in this video we're going to talk some more about BOMDAS, and I want to introduce the operation of exponentiation to the whole discussion. Alright? In the previous video we spoke about the fact that you have to resolve the contents of the brackets first before you do anything else. And we mentioned that resolving the contents of the brackets means that you have to interact the contents of the brackets with whatever else it interacted with outside the bracket. Check this out. Some years ago in a C-Sec BAS paper, there was a particular question in the algebra, question 2. It was a substitution, and somewhere in the course of working out that question, we had to do this. 2 by 6 squared. See? What a lot of students did is that they multiply the 2 by the 6. So in other words, just reciting it in their own mind, in their own thoughts, they would say 2 by 6 squared. If you're reading this as 2 by 6 squared, what you will hear in your head is 2 by 6 squared. See? So we have to be so particular and so careful and so vigilant in terms of how we think about what it is we're reading. Because if you're thinking 2 by 6 squared, then this is what you will write, without the knowledge that I'm going to share in a little bit. Right? On the other hand, you could think the same 2 by 6 squared on the condition that you understand that that is actually equal to 2 multiplied by 6 squared. See? So 2 by 6 squared sounds identical to 2 by 6 squared. It's the same phonetic sound you're hearing in your head when you're thinking. 2 by 6 squared, 2 by 6 squared, yeah, 2 by 6 squared. But it's two totally different things we're talking about. Alright? So we have to be careful, and that is why we have to be very, very specific in terms of the words that we use, the language that we use. And as we practice, we have to be very careful how we're thinking about the thing, because that could lead us down the wrong path. So what you have to understand is that in terms of BOMDAS, getting from 6 in brackets squared to 6 squared, that's a whole process by itself. That is the process of exponentiation, meaning we take the power first and then multiply, as opposed to multiplying first and then taking the power, which is what we have here. The problem with this, if you go here, is that this is not equal to this. 2 multiplied by 6 squared, all to be squared, is actually equal to, watch it now, 2 squared multiplied by 6 squared. Which, if we want to use brackets, we will get 2 squared, sorry, 2 to the 6, madness is this. 2 squared in brackets by 6 all to be squared, which is clearly not the same thing as this. Right? So just from a simple point of view of working it out, bearing in mind the other rules which we have to be aware of, right? To get from here to here, there's a particular rule under the topic of indices which we wouldn't discuss in this video. There's a whole playlist on the YouTube channel where we did that. But that rule tells us that 2 multiplied by 6 all to be squared is the same thing as 2 squared multiplied by 6 squared, which is 2 squared in brackets by 6 in brackets, sorry, 2 squared outside the bracket by 6 inside the bracket squared, which we could go further to write as 4 by 6 squared. So 2 by 6 all to be squared is actually 4 by 6 squared, not 2 by 6 squared, which is what you started off with. Right? So by taking this to the logical conclusion, you see that this is not the same thing as that. Right? What we're looking for is this. You resolve the bracket 6 squared. So you now have 2 multiplied by 6 squared. And then from there, you just end up with, let me see what. You just end up with 2 by 36, which will give you 72 as the answer. In this case, the answer is 4 by 36, which will give you 144. Yeah? Right. So, from a BOMDAS perspective, you need to be very clear that anytime you have a power, you deal with the power first, not the other way around. So you don't multiply 2 by 6 and then square it, which is this, which if you carry it right out, you realize is clearly not that. Right? What you do is that you work out the power first by itself. 6 in brackets squared is 6 squared, that's 36. And now we multiply by the 2. So in other words, the exponentiation, the powers, the indices, that actually takes precedence over the multiplication. And that little piece of information is not something that a lot of students are aware of explicitly where the BOMDAS is concerned. Alright, so I want to throw that out there. It is a mistake that a lot of students make. It will mash you up in a multiple choice. It will lick you up in a paper 2. Maybe in a paper 3, who knows? Right? Problems. Right? So we don't want to get caught making a mistake. But the next thing now is that there is a different variation of BOMDAS that we refer to as PEMDAS or PEMDAS. Right? So in PEMDAS we have parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition and subtraction. PEMDAS, same thing, different language, different spelling. Parentheses, indices, multiplication, division, addition and subtraction. So in both cases, in this version, you have something that explicitly tells us that the power is what you deal with first, after the bracket. So if it were, say, if this instead of being 2 by 6 squared, if it were 2 by 4, not 4, let me make life a little more interesting. If it were 2 by 5 plus 1 all to be squared, right? No problem. We know that the first thing you do is add the 5 and the 1. You simplify the contents of the bracket. You work out the inside of the bracket, which will then take us to 2 by 6 squared. And then, having simplified the contents of the brackets, you now resolve the brackets entirely by finishing the interaction with whatever going on outside the bracket. In this case, you have two options. You have 6 to the power of 2, which is one operation, which is exponentiation. Or you can multiply the 6 by the 2. That is multiplication. But we're sure that we're not multiplying because we went down this road and we end up here. We ended up here, which we saw is not that. So we rule that out. So from this standpoint, just going through the logic of it, we know that multiplication is not the first option. But from the other standpoint of just knowing, just being aware, just having the knowledge of exponentiation as a separate operation, then we can see that the exponentiation takes precedence over your multiplication. So after you work out the contents of the brackets, as your P, parentheses, which is just another word for brackets, you work out the parentheses. After you do that, the next step, if we have a power to deal with, is to deal with the power first and then multiply. And that's basically it, you know. That is basically it. Alright? So that is a very important piece of information. Don't forget it.